What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the JERRY1 Podcast. Today is Monday, January 18th, 2021, coming at you about 10:30 a.m. here on the East Coast. You're watching us on Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. This is episode 16 of the JERRY1 Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Felice. You're watching this on YouTube right now, but I also can let you know that you can listen to the JERRY1 Podcast on Spotify, iTunes/Apple Podcasts, which are about the same thing. It's the podcast app if you have an iPhone. You can also listen to this on Anchor, Google Podcasts, and Radio Public and Breaker, that I've been told. I'm not sure what Radio Public and Breaker are, but I've been told you can listen to it on there as well. So we got a big show on hand. Fantasy hockey. Week 1 is in the books. Week 2 about to get going here in the next couple hours. Same with fantasy basketball. Big surprises in week 1. Matt was the top scoring team. Matt ended Nate's JERRY1 Fantasy Hockey best 10-game winning streak. Nate was 4 wins off from getting the longest winning streak in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports history, which was a 14-game winning streak by Paul back in the inaugural season of fantasy basketball, which was also snapped by Matt. So that's a fun fact. 3 of those semifinalists from last year, 3 of the 4 semifinalists from last year's fantasy hockey semifinals, who got their season cut short, lost in week 1. That would be me, Nate, and Paul. All lost in week 1. Paul's 6-game franchise best winning streak in fantasy hockey also got snapped by Josh in week 1. Josh has been surprisingly good at fantasy hockey. Don't know how, but so me, Nate, and Paul all fall in week 1. So some big surprises. Matt, the top team. We'll get into fantasy hockey later after the theme song here. If you're watching this on YouTube. Fantasy basketball, Larry and Kyle looking like the favorites. They're both 4-0, both off to their first ever 4-0 starts in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports history. So, they were both in the semifinals last year. So that is starting to look like a pretty big rivalry there. Larry could have had Kyle beat in last year's semifinals. So we'll see how those two play out the rest of the year. But who else is in the mix? Jack and Josh playing in like an elimination game in week 4, and it was Jack who snuck out a win. Jack had to come back from 8 points down going into Sunday and got the, I believe, a 7-point victory. And I'm going to redo my playoff predictions. I know I messed it up last week's podcast. I'm going to redo it. Maybe I got some changes, but we'll get into it. Fantasy basketball, we'll get into it all at the end of the show, because today's guest is my good college friend. Nate Severance is on the show today. Nate has been on the show before, and he's part of the Fantasy Hockey League. So this is mostly a fantasy hockey podcast. So we're going to talk, if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to do the theme song here. We're going to talk a little fantasy hockey. We're going to get Nate on the show, talk more fantasy hockey. And I'm going to talk fantasy basketball at the end of the show, and we'll get you out of here. Episode 16 of JERRY1 Fantasy Sports Podcast, which is starting right now. Nate's going to come on in a second, but yeah, let's talk a little fantasy hockey before we get him on. And week one is in the books. Matt was the top scoring team, beat Nate. Like I said, Nate was on a JERRY1 Fantasy Hockey best 10-game winning streak. So that was kind of a surprise. It's very odd to see Nate 0-1. Gotta admit, this is his first ever 0-1 start in his ESPN JERRY1 career. He was 0-1 over on Fantrax.com in the lone season of fantasy college basketball, but we don't talk about that. But Nate, yeah, this is kind of odd. He's off to an 0-1 start. His winning streak's over. He's only had 2 losing streaks in JERRY1 Fantasy Hockey history in his career. And he hasn't lost back-to-back games, so he hasn't had a losing streak in hockey since week not sure what week it is, but it occurred on December 9th, 2018 was the last time they had a losing streak in fantasy hockey. So that's that's a long time ago. That is, it's 2021 now. So yeah, this is kind of strange to see him 0-1. He plays me this week. We're both 0-1s, battle of 0-1s in week 2. So, we could have potentially met in the finals. We were both winning when the semifinals got cut short in fantasy hockey. So a lot of more stakes on the line here in week 2 than I really expected when this schedule came out. But another big surprise, I think it was even more of a surprise than Matt beating Nate in week 1, was Josh beating Paul in week 1 as well. Josh gets the big win over Paul. It's only Josh's 7th ever win against Paul in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports in 26 career meetings. But 5 of those 7 wins have come here in fantasy hockey. So Josh is kind of a threat here in fantasy hockey. While Paul, just trying to get his way back here in fantasy hockey. He had a terrible second year. He bounced back last year, made the playoffs, 2 seed. But this year, off to an 0-1 start. So we'll see what Paul does. Only 10-week regular season. Justin Kiefer, though, semifinals, the only one to win in week 1. He beat Q. Q's still trying to find his image. Last place finished last year. Justin Kiefer, always a threat. When you talk about fantasy hockey, you always think of Nate, you think of Paul, and you think of Justin Kiefer. Those guys know hockey the most, so those guys are going to be the biggest threats. And, of course, Jack finally got his 50th career win. He's up to 51 now in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports because he swept the board. He's the only one of the 6 owners who played both basketball and hockey to win both in last week, week 1 hockey, week 4 basketball. And Jack's up to 50 career wins. He got his win over me. Yeah, it was just a really bad week for me. Historically bad. One of the worst performances. I think it's the 5th worst performance in fantasy hockey point wise. If you push it into a 7-day matchup, even though there was a stat correction, I might have to check it up here. It's definitely bottom 5 worst score I've ever put. I only put up 31 points in 5 days. And if you don't know fantasy hockey, it's about like football, but it's 7 days long. It's a 7-day matchup, so it's about 100 points, a little over 100 is about what the average is. And I scored 31 points. I did get a stat correction. I was at 33 last night. Now I'm at 31 here on Monday morning. So definitely bottom 5 worst score in fantasy hockey history. Definitely not happy with it. But we'll turn around. Tough turnaround though. You got to play Nate, who's off a loss. So we will see. We're going to talk to Nate. But Josh and Jack, some surprises in week 1. I think that's the big talk about here in week 1. I think I have more confidence in Josh than I do Jack, I will say, in fantasy hockey, just because Josh put up a better performance in week 1. And Josh has been there before. He's had 2 playoff appearances. Jack only 1 in the 1 year. We'll see if he has a sophomore slump. And is Matt finally going to make the playoffs? He did win the regular season points championship his first year. He's off to the lead in points to start this season off. I think it's finally time for Matt to be in the playoffs. I predicted him last week that he would be in the playoffs. He plays Josh this week, so that's lone battle 1-0 team. So it's a huge game for Matt. Huge game for Josh, though. Josh could win this week. That'd be even more like proving that he's here to stay. Big game for Q this week. He's lost 5 straight dating back to last year. He's got to be jacked this week, I think. A 10-week regular season, you can't fall 0-2, especially if you're a Q team who's trying to prove something this year, especially against a jack team who you're trying to catch. So that's fantasy hockey week 1 recap, week 2 preview. Still in the early going. Trying to find the image of this league still. Year 4, hard to believe, 4th year. Nate's 0-1. I still think he's the favorite to win it all this year. So, and we're going to talk to that favorite right now. Here is our conversation with Nate Severance. Here you go. Today's guest is on for his second time on the JERRY1 podcast. He was on episode 3 back in the end of July. Is episode 16 now. This man is one of 4 owners to have multiple JERRY1 fantasy sport championships. All has 5 of them: hockey, basketball, 3 football. Matt has 3 of them: 2 football, 1 college basketball. I have 2 of them: basketball and baseball. And then today's guest, Nate Severance, has 1 in hockey. He's the last reigning ever hockey champ that we've had, even though it was 2 years ago now. And basketball, he won. We've seen him in hockey. We've seen him in basketball. We've seen him in college basketball here on the JERRY1 stage. He's been in one of my 2 Tuca college fantasy football leagues. So he's a fantasy guy. Nate Severance. Nate, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing good, man. Where are you coming from right now?
West Warwick, Rhode Island is where I'm at. Hanging out at home with the dog. I just woke her up from a nap.
Very nice. And so fantasy hockey is all you're in JERRY1 currently. A little refresher of last year. 17-2 you were last year. Unbelievable season. Your number one seed. Your season was asterisk. There we go.
My best attempt.
You were the number 1 seed. Your season was cut short when you're up 3 points against my cousin's husband, Dustin Kiefer, with only 4 days to go in the semifinals. Then this year, you had that 10-game winning streak coming into this year. JERRY1 Fantasy Hockey Most had an unlucky week. He still scored 3rd in scoring, but my brother Matt was 1st in scoring, so an unlucky week for you. You're off to an 0-1 start, but what are your thoughts on your team so far through 1 week?
It's gonna take some managing on my part this year. It's not gonna be a set it and forget it kind of deal. I feel like everybody stepped up so much, especially in their drafting, that it just became difficult. You kind of got to look for those diamonds in the rough and figure out what's going on. And I don't know. I feel pretty confident coming off that first week. The first few days were a little rough, but then we got going, and I think we're starting to feel out the team a little bit. And top 3, can't really complain. Should be able to, as long as I can stay above 500 before the break for not really the break, but before the halfway point of the season, I feel like I'll be pretty good.
Yeah, and is actually, this was the 60th ever regular season week in fantasy hockey, and that was your 46th time you finished top 3 in scoring. So it's just been a dominating performance from you, and this is the first 0-1 start that you've ever had in an ESPN JERRY1 fantasy sport. We're not talking about college basketball. We're on fantrags.com, but first ever 0-1 start. So it's kind of surprising for you. And if you do lose this week, we'll get into your week this year. It would be only your 3rd ever losing streak. So you haven't lost 2 in a row since December of 2018 in fantasy hockey. So that was a long time ago. And it was a week 1 of surprises. I lost, you lost, and Paul lost. We're all in the semifinals last year. We all lost in week 1. What do you think, most importantly for you, do you think the 5 days, it was only 5 days week 1, do you think that hurt your chances of winning in week 1?
A little bit, just because I started to make moves a little late. Usually I like to make moves by like Wednesday of the week, but since it was so late, I wasn't able to do what I usually traditionally do to try to catch back up if I'm down. But they had a good push on Sunday. We closed the gap a little bit. So yeah, if we had a little bit more, I think a little bit more time, I think we could have gave Matt a run for his money. But I also think that Matt just has a really, really solid core this year. I was impressed with him when I was watching him on the draft board and the way he was drafting. He looked like he actually wanted to win this year and not be a last place team or miss the playoffs anymore. I think he said, "Screw that! I'm coming for you guys now."
Yeah, and he's the one owner in this league that has never made the playoffs, and he's done well in these other JERRY1 leagues. So he's trying to make a statement this year. And but let's talk about your draft. You had to draft this guy on my Rangers again. I can't say his name. Who was your 8th overall pick?
Panarin.
You drafted Panarin. Then you drafted Mitch Marner with the 9th overall pick. So you had the snake at the end of the first round. And you got Kyle Connor, Winnipeg forward, and Braden Point, Tampa Bay forward. Right? Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
And then you didn't draft your first defender until Eric Carlson, San Jose defender, 40th overall pick. You went forward heavy, which a lot of people did. What are your thoughts on your team, your draft, I should say? How do you think your draft went?
I missed out on a couple of players that I really, really wanted. I sat there and hemmed and hawed. Like the time was up. It was like it would have been a round early, a few picks early for them to go. So I thought that I would see them come back around, but I missed out. So they were the two of my defensive core last year. It was Kale Maker and Quinn Hughes. You know, I had them both lined up. They were pegged. They were in the queue. They were ready to go. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll just take one more forward. Maybe I'll just wait one more round. I was hoping that people weren't really looking at the multiple different screens on the draft board. But like I said, everybody took it a lot more seriously this year. Probably because money's on the line. And I wish I had those guys, but I feel like I did pretty good at assembling a team that I can do something with. My forwards are solid. I don't have that standout guy like a Draisaitl or McDavid, but Panarin's always been consistent. Kyle Connor, I had him last year, and then I dropped him like probably week 3 or 4 because he wasn't producing, and then he just decided to go off. So I decided to take the chance, not really take the chance on him, but give him another go. And he's paid off pretty well so far in this first week. So we'll see how it goes from there. I got lucky when I drafted those 2 goalies dead last, and then they put up that shutout. Both of them had a shutout on the first day.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second, your goalies. But yeah, money is on the line this year. $7 for first place, and then $10 your money back for second place. And then just like, first of all, a crazy stat I saw with the draft. 4th year of this league, and Paul has had the 3rd pick 3 of those 4 years. So that's crazy. And he drafted Draisaitl with a first overall pick. But Panarin, you're reunited with him. He was one of your studs last year. What are your expectations for Panarin this year?
The same as always. Just go out there and produce points. I mean, he's more of an assist guy, but he works really well there in New York. He really started to come out of his shell, and I think he's going to do just fine. He might have to carry a little bit more of the load, but I think he'll do real good. He'll be my top scorer for sure. But yeah, I'm excited to have him back. I've always liked his play style, and he's just kind of a go-get-it kind of guy.
Yeah, and you mentioned your 2 goalies, Petra, whatever his freaking last name is, Mezarek?
Sure, I don't know.
Carolina goalie, and then you had the
Islanders goalie.
The Islanders goalie. These freaking names, man, in hockey. But you drafted them last 2 picks of the entire draft because you had to draft 2 goalies. And now we saw you doing this at the end of last year, and we talked about this on the last podcast you were on. And not playing goalies because goalies are the only one in this scoring system that we have right now that get minuses, but they can get up to 8 points, in which you had probably the best goalie game that you could ever have. Your two goalies got 2 shutouts, and they got 8 points each, which was 16 points, which was nice for you on last Thursday. But now you've cut the Carolina goalie, and you put the Islanders goalie on the IR. Right now you have two empty spots of goalies, just 2 spots just sitting there. What are your thoughts on this strategy going into this year as well?
Actually, I took the Islanders goalie off the IR today, and then I dumped him.
Okay. I updated.
Have,
Breaking news: he's gone.
I currently have 0 goalies on my team because that is 2 skaters. I had to draft them, and then they came through for me in that first week. I was like, hey, might consider this whole goalie thing. And then I was looking around the league the next couple of days and seeing not many positive marks on some of these guys. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather take the bet on a skater having an 8-point day than a goalie having an 8-point day, because I feel like that's even almost more likely at some point. So if I can put 2 extra skaters out there, I'm going to put 2 extra skaters out there every day that I can.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy. Do you think other owners in this league will follow your suit?
I don't know. Maybe when it gets down to crunch time a little bit more, when you start thinking desperate. I'm kind of desperate all the time, so that's just how I roll. But I think riding out the goalie situation isn't a bad idea. I mean, you play the game to play the game, and you've got those pieces in there, and it's almost kind of like a cheap move to dump your goalies for skaters just because of the way the league point system is. But
was there any little bit of in your mind of keeping the goalies after that performance last Thursday?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely did. And then I came up. I was coming up short to Matt, so I needed to make sure that I had more skaters than he did every day. So that's when I moved the Carolina goalie, dropped him to pick up a skater that played on Sunday, and I moved the Islanders goalie to the IR because he was eligible for it. So instead of dumping him just completely, I just moved him to the IR, and I was like, "That's fine," because I can pick up another skater at the same time.
Yeah, another guy on your team. As I look at your team over here, Evgeny Malkin, Pittsburgh legend. 41st overall. You got him 6th round, but he had 0 points in the opening week. He's 34 years old. What are your thoughts on him this year?
I don't see this trend of 0 points lasting very long. I think he'll come around and be the Malkin of consistency again. But yeah, definitely a surprising first week. I expect I'm going to hold on to him for a little while. Maybe down the line he'll be an all right trade piece, but we'll have to see how the schedule kind of plays out. I'm not too desperate to get rid of anybody or move anybody just yet, because it's still early, and we don't really know.
Anybody else on your team that you think could be like a sleeper this year? Anybody you're high on? You're like, yes, I got him.
I picked up a lot of guys who I picked up like 2 or 3 guys who had disappointing seasons last year, that I hope will turn it around this year. I mean, the fantasy league said that there's some guys to keep an eye on, like DeBrincat, got him. I'm hoping that he plays well. I have Mantha from the Flyers, or not the Flyers, the Red Wings. Sorry. I got him. I think he's going to be an all right piece. I think he's going to do a lot better than he did in the past. So I'm feeling pretty high on him. There's somebody else. I have someone from the Flyers Who wasn't? Actually, I might have just dumped him.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anybody from Philly.
No, I think I got rid of him.
You were a big fan of him for a couple days.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think he skates very much this week, so I think he got moved for now, but we'll see.
What are your thoughts on Q's draft? Q trying to, he was in the finals just a couple years ago against you, lost. Terrible year last year. Q trying to bounce back this year. He did lose in week 1 to Justin Kiefer, but
yeah, I think Q did a better job this year. He definitely was making some picks that you have to kind of research a little bit to make picks on. He made a couple of them where he went out and reached a little bit, I thought, but you never know. Those could pan out for him. I mean, he could make us look stupid here in a minute, but yeah, I think he did a fine job of drafting a team. I don't think he's a powerhouse quite yet, but a lot of the hockey season is moves in throughout the year. Staying on top of your weekly matchup is what it comes down to, and just trying to keep your points up.
yeah, one thing I always like about Q, his team names, he always comes up with his people he has on his team. Right now, his team name is Wheeler Down Eichel Lane. He's a clever kid.
Yeah. We might go in and steal one of those guys from him, so he has to change his name just for fun.
Yep. And but a typical hockey season is about 19 to 20 something weeks. This year, with the NHL starting up so late, and I wanted to keep 5 playoff teams still with the 2 weeks, so it's only a 10-week regular season this year. It's short, you're 0-1. This is weird to say that you're 0-1, but 0-2, and you're playing me this week.
Yeah.
We could have been the finals last year. That's how we were on our way to playing each other in the finals last year. And now we're both 0-1. I mean, you could say this for you or me. 0-2 though, is that crucial in a 10-week regular season?
Yes, I think so. This is definitely a must-win week. I feel like because you don't ever want to fall below 500, but falling below 500 in a week or in a shortened season like this is it's going to be rough, because then you're going to start getting a little desperate. You're going to start making some impatient moves, and you might lose out on some guys by dumping some guys and picking up some hot skaters now, but are going to screw you on the back end if you make it to the playoffs or anything like that. So it's all a balancing game, but definitely 0-2 is not the start that you're looking for. Definitely not the start that I'm looking for. I think I've already used up 5 of my 7 transactions for this week already. So.
Oh, really? I haven't even checked that. Really?
Yeah, I gotta save the last ones for Sunday.
Yeah.
If I'm
at least the weekend. But definitely different mindsets from your team and my team. At least your team scored well. You're in the playoff picture still, even at 0-1 with the 5 seed, because top 5 make it, 3 get the bye. But me, I had like a JERRY1 fantasy hockey record low. I only scored 31 points. My team, that's not how we wanted to start the season. So I say there's more pressure on me for sure than there is for you to win this week. And because if I fall to 0-2 with the way I've been scoring, if I don't score again this week, 0-2, it could be over. So, and how do you feel? Is 0-2 over for you?
No, I don't think it's over for me because of the scoring production that I had in the first week. I was nervous there for a little while. The first half or the first couple of days, I was down. I wasn't in the top 3 of scoring. I was down in like 5th or something like that, and that wasn't where I wanted to be. If I was going to take a loss in week 1, I wanted it to be unlucky week.
Yep.
Because I wasn't confident. I was not very confident in my draft. I could barely sleep that night. I put the phone down. I was like, man, that sucked. Like, I missed out on some good players. I could have had a squad, but we're making it work. And that 93-point showing is good coming out of the first week. Not too far behind the top two, within striking distance at least.
Yep. And you are the defending regular season scoring champ. You dominated last year. You absolutely scored way more points in second place last year. So, COVID, 2 IRs we got this year. And obviously we're starting to see in the NBA games getting postponed. Haven't seen it yet in the NHL. How are you going to play that this year?
Probably the same as I mean, you just gotta take it and roll with it. I guess probably the object is, well, I'm gonna do the same that I like to play anyway, is put more skaters out there than the next guy. So if I'm able to do that, if COVID pops its stupid head up and postpones some stuff and shuts down some players for a couple weeks, then you might have to consider making some moves, picking some people up that you wouldn't ordinarily pick up. But at the same time, you got to do what you got to do. And I think some of it will depend on who you're playing that week. Like if you're a top 2 team and you're playing a bottom team, you might not have to really too worry about it too bad. But if it's a crucial matchup, buying for a playoff spot, you're going to have to figure it out and do what you got to do to squeeze your way in.
Yeah, and the difference between hockey and you play fantasy football, it's football this last COVID season, they tried to get, and they did. They got all the games, well, not all the games, but they tried to get every game in for that week of playing. Hockey, on the other hand, a game gets postponed, you're probably losing that game for the entire week and it'll probably be played later in the season. So, so it's definitely could be a play and a factor. And I've seen it in basketball already, and teams owners are just losing out on days and games, and those are precious points that you could have got. So it's definitely a factor, and we'll see how it plays out here in hockey. It's a short season, but hopefully wish for the best. But every owner that comes on my show for the second time plays my new game. I've texted you a little bit about it.
Yeah.
It is called JERRY1 True or False. I will ask 5 statements about your 3 JERRY1 franchises, even though 2 are not inactive right now. Only 1 is active, the hockey team. But I will ask 5 statements from easier to harder. You will start with 100 points, and then you will hear the statement about your team, and then you will wager how much confidence you have, and then you will say true or false, and you lose the points or get the points. Most you can get is 3,200 points. Top scorer last week, Larry, got 800 points. There's only been 3 people to go. It is 800 is the top score. The second best score is 1, and the last score is 0. So if you do get to 0 in the middle of the game, your next question will be worth 1. So gamble wisely. Nate, are you ready to play?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Statement 1, easier to harder, remember, so this is going to be easy. True or false? Nate has 1 championship in fantasy hockey. So how much you want to wager, and then true or false?
That's a trick question, but I'm going to wager 100, and it's true. I do only have 1.
And that is correct. Yes, only 1 in hockey. Kind of a tougher first question, or first statement, I should say. But Nate is up to 200 points. Here we go. Second statement. Nate has over 40 career wins in hockey, regular season playoffs. True or false? Over 40.
I think we just talked about this, actually. I'm going to wager 200, and I'm going to say true.
And that is correct again. Yes. Yes, you have 47 career wins, 45 regular season, 2 playoffs. Yep. And like I said, 46 top 3 finishes in 60 regular season weeks. That is absolutely insane. I think the next closest guy is like 20 something. So you just absolutely dominated. Last year, you just absolutely dominated. It sucks that season did not finish, but you're up to 400 points. 3 statements to go. Let's keep it going, Nate.
Oh, man.
Nate beat Q in fantasy college basketball. True or false?
400? No, I did not. That is false.
No, Nate, it's wrong. It's wrong.
What?
You did beat Q once. Week 11 of that season.
Is that my
one of your 4 wins that year. So
I didn't even pay attention to that team.
oh no, it's tough to see. All right, since you're at 0, this next statement is worth 1 point automatically. So let's see if you get it. Nate's longest winning streak in fantasy basketball is 7 games.
Ooh. You know, I'm gonna go with true. I think that's true.
I'm sorry, Nate. That is wrong again. Luckily, this game does not go in the minuses, so you will stay at 0. Yeah, it is 6 games.
Okay.
It's 6 games, week 13 to present day. So if you ever came back to fantasy basketball, you would have a 6-game winning streak going. You had 2 5-game winning streaks that year and a 6-game winning streak to close out the season. So, you dominated that as well. But here we go. Not the best game effort right here, but it is the final statement. You can get to 1 point, and it will be the second tie for the second best score in this game. Nate's lowest scoring performance in the regular season in hockey is 71 points. True.
That's true. That's true.
What? True? Final answer?
Yeah.
And that is incorrect again. I am so sorry, Nate. It is 70 points. Is your final?
Oh, God.
Week 9 of the inaugural season against Josh, you lost 81-70 that week. And
that was a bad one.
yeah, that's why it's the 5th statement. I made it a little tricky. And you finished with 0, which is still tied for the 3rd best score in this game. Hats off to you, but yeah, we're just gonna throw this game out. And but Nate, before I get you out of here, we've said this before. It is an unfinished business season this year in fantasy hockey. What is the mindset for the rest of this season for you?
Win.
Yeah, that's the thing with you. It is championship or bust almost. It's every time now.
Yeah. I at least need to finish second so I can get my money back so my wife doesn't kill me. So there's that one. But there's plenty of things that I could spend $10 on that would have been way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, win. I can't. I at least got a top 3. I want that bye in the first round of the playoffs. I want to. Yeah, that's my light goal. Big goal overall is win the chip. But if I finish top 3, I'll be not too disappointed.
How many wins do you think you need to finish top 3 in a 10-week regular season?
With how I feel like the league is right now, let's see, 10-week regular season, top 3, you probably need 6 or 7 wins. I think 7 wins. puts you top 3 easy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, long way to go. Even though it's short season, long way to go. Still 9 weeks to go. And week two is about to start here in about 10 minutes. So hopefully that lineup is set.
Yep. Oh yeah. We.
Yeah. Yeah. So Nate, I wish the best of luck to you down the stretch of the season. Maybe we'll get you on later in the year. But thanks for coming on, Nate.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm just gonna leave this here for a minute. This is just sulking.
It was good to have Nate on. Good to catch up with him. Yeah, he seems confident still about his team, and I think he should because he's always a threat in fantasy hockey. And you know, I wish the best of luck for him. But let's talk a little about fantasy basketball. Let's throw the standings up there if you're watching on YouTube. Week 4 is in the books. Week 5 preview here. Week 4, I think is headlined by what would we say headline is for this one? I think, if you want to talk all of JERRY1 fantasy basketball, I think it's headlined by Jack getting that big win over Josh. I think that is a huge win for Jack. It keeps his season alive for a little bit. I don't really see Jack or Josh going anywhere this season in fantasy basketball just because what we've seen in the first third of the regular season, as the first third of the regular season is already over. That's kind of crazy to think, but in the shortened 12-week fantasy football type like season. So I think Jack, it's a nice win. Try to get some confidence. I think if Josh had won, I think I would have had more confidence in Josh going forward than Jack. Jack team's a mess. This Josh team is not great either, but Jack gets the big win. Had to come back by 8 points down on Sunday to get that win. So, and of course, Kyle and Larry, obviously they're the big headlines as well. 4-0, both of them are 4-0 for the first time ever in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports. So, and of course, Larry's won now a franchise best in basketball 6 straight games, and Kyle's now won a 5 straight games dating back to last season. Those two are hot. Those two are they're looking like the favorites, and their matchups this week in week 5. Larry plays Justin Kiefer, who's dropped 3 straight since his week 1 win. And then of course Kyle plays Kurt. The schedule just keeps getting tougher and tougher for Kurt. It's going to be something because there's a really good chance he go to 2-3 after this week. This is a really good Kurt team. So, this is like I said, this is the tightest JERRY1 league ever. I will say that, 23 seasons that we've had at JERRY1 Fantasy Sports, this is the tightest league ever. So many good teams. Larry and Kyle, they're just steamrolling through this tough league as well. So Larry and Kyle got top 3 scoring finishes in week 4 as well. So they keep racking up those as well. Paul finally broke through after 36 straight weeks in this league that he has played in without finishing top in scoring for the week. Paul finally broke through and he dominated week 4, and he was the top scoring team. He's got the most top scoring weeks. He's got 13 of them in his career now, which is the most of all time in fantasy basketball overall. And he finally broke through and was first in scoring this week. So Paul is back. Paul's in the playoff picture right now because of scoring. Matt's in the playoff picture right now because of scoring. Those are some JERRY1 legends right there. Sam's course right there. Those 5 teams right there. And it's Kurt hanging on to the last playoff spot as we speak right now. Blake and Justin Hiwa looking out. Don't sleep on this Justin Hiwa team, though. Got a big win over me in week 4. He's always right there. He's made 3 straight years of making the playoffs in this league. So Justin's always a threat. Blake wants to be there. Blake, it's just not there yet. He had a great weekend, unlucky week. Matt had an unlucky week against Kyle. Blake had an unlucky week against Paul. Blake's just not there yet. He's not a Paul Russo yet in this league. Paul's a 5-time champ overall in JERRY1 Fantasy Sports. Blake wants to be there, but he's not a Paul yet. Paul gets the best of Blake. First time Paul had beaten Blake in fantasy basketball in 2 meetings. Blake plays Josh this week, so big chance for Blake to bounce back. So And Jack plays Matt this week, so we'll see if Jack does against a Matt team that's only a game ahead of him and right there in the playoff picture. So huge game for Jack this week. And of course, a game that's kind of like, taking not the spotlight this week is me versus Sam, which has always been like a great game in JERRY1 since Sam's joined since 2018. And of course, that's a rematch of the semifinals back when I won it all in the 2018-2019 season. Last time we saw a champion in this league. So that's a big game. But the biggest game, I think, even though Kyle and Larry both looking to get the 5-0, I think the biggest game in week 5 is Paul versus Justin, even though it's a one-sided affair on the basketball side of things. Paul 7-0 all-time versus Justin in fantasy basketball. So we will see if Justin can finally break through against Paul. Justin's always been like, never considered like up there with the Pauls of the JERRY1 world, because Justin's still looking for his first championship after so many years of trying. This is his 5th year in basketball, 10th year in football, and he had 1 year in college basketball, so that's 16 years. This is his 16th season for Justin Hilwa, and he still doesn't have a championship. So someday he'll break through. Maybe it's this year. I don't know. It's a really tough league. So we will see on the fantasy basketball side of things for Justin to come. Justin Kiefer, though, looking to end that 3-game losing streak as he, like I said, he plays Larry this week. So it doesn't get easier for Justin Kiefer. But big games here in week 5, and I'm looking forward to it. We will see. We will see what happens after this week as we head towards the halfway point of the regular season already in a couple of weeks, next 2 weeks. Season starts here, or week 5, I should say, starts here in just a little over an hour. So get that lineup out there, even though you're watching this a day later. But here, I'm going to do my predictions for fantasy basketball. And I'm going to stick with the 1 seed is Kyle. 2 seed is Larry. 3 seed is Sam. 4 seed is Kurt. 5 seed is Blake. 6 seed Matt. Keeping that the same. I did mess up the reseeding, so the 4-5 always plays the 1, and the 3-6 winner. So the 4-5 matchup winner, I got Kurt as well, but playing Kyle. And I got Sam, Matt. I got Matt still getting this upset. I still don't think Sam's ready yet to win a playoff game. So Matt, Larry. But this time I have Kyle beating Kurt, and I have Larry beating Matt. I have Larry, Kyle finals. Kurt, Matt, third place game. Third place game, I got Matt winning it. I think Kurt's not going to be ready to come to play to get money. And I still got Kyle winning it all over Larry. So that's my predictions. That's my final predictions finally here in week 5. A little bit of something. But don't sleep on Paul, and don't sleep on Justin Hilwa, because they're right there. I would say don't sleep on me, but COVID really fucking my team. So we'll see. I'm not off to a best start here in hockey and basketball, but that's the end of the show. There's no birthday shout outs this week. So you're watching this on YouTube or not, but you can also listen to this now on, you can listen to the JERRY1 podcast on Spotify, iTunes / Apple Podcasts, which is the podcast app on your iPhone, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Breaker. Once again, no idea what Breaker is or Radio Public, but supposedly it's on there. So listen to it there. By all means, go listen to it. And I just want to say thanks, Nate, for coming on today's show. Thank you for coming on once again on the JERRY1 podcast. It was great to talk to you, Nate. Great to catch up with you. I just want to say good luck, everyone, in week 2 of fantasy hockey and week 5 in fantasy basketball, as that starts here in the next hour, as I'm speaking here at 10:52 a.m. on this Monday morning, January 18th, 2021. So, I've been Nick Feliz. Set your lineup, and we will see you next time on the JERRY1 Fantasy Sports Podcast. Goodbye.